Hi, you're watching Reddit Shikstore, and if you're looking for a story that doesn't start with butterflies in your stomach and a happy ending, you've come to the right place. My name is Vance. For 26 years, I was the senior archival linguist for the Viridian Consortium. My work was not with living languages, but with dead ones. Dying ones. The whispered fragments of cultures ground to dust by time, war, or sheer neglect. My tools were spectral imaging, algorithmic pattern recognition, and a cold, patient empathy for silence. I could reconstruct the commerce laws of a lost river civilization from the water-damaged corner of a clay tablet. I could hear the ghost of a love poem in the erasure marks on a vellum palimpsest. I didn't translate words, I resurrected contexts. I was an archaeologist of meaning. My wife, Elara, was the consortium's director of philanthropic outreach. She was the bridge between my dust and their gold. She translated my silent, fragmented worlds into compelling narratives for billionaires and foundations, convincing them that funding our digs and scanners was a redemption for their own plundered fortunes. She made decay fashionable. She sold salvation by the syllable. I admired her alchemy. I unearthed the bones she made them sing. The corruption of our text began with a new dialect. His name was Dar. Silas Reed, a public intellectual and narrative strategist hired as the consortium's first-ever communications archaeologist. A preposterous title. He had a podcast, a book on the storytelling instinct, and a smile that suggested he'd just discovered a secret about you. His mandate was to make our work resonate with the modern mythos. He wanted to turn the fall of the Hittite Empire into a leadership seminar and market Linear B as the world's first blockchain. I observed the syntactic shift. Elara's speech, once elegantly persuasive, adopted his hollow cadences. Embedded narrative, cognitive archetypes, meaning layer disruption. Their alignment sessions became weekly, then daily. She purchased a new wardrobe of austere, architectural linen, his aesthetic. The scent of my world, dust, ozone from the scanners, the faint, sweet decay of ancient papyrus, was replaced on her skin by his scent. Clean, chemical, a scent called petrichor that smelled nothing like actual rain. The verification arrived through my own medium. A corrupted translation. Elara had used my private terminal, forgetting to log out. In the search history, amid queries for grant deadlines, was a single, chilling string. Eros-agape etymology plus conceptual bridge in pre-Socratic fragments. It was a search not for work, but for a personal mythology. She was seeking an ancient, intellectual justification to romanticize what was, at its core, a vulgar cliché. She was trying to translate their affair into a dead language to make it feel profound. The betrayal was not in the act, but in the desperate, scholarly garnish she was trying to apply to it. She was forging a provenance for a fake. The pain was not a scream. It was the sound of a foundational papyrus disintegrating into unrecognizable powder. An archivist does not mourn the crumbling of a unique text. He documents the precise pattern of the decay, isolates the causative agent, humidity, light, a specific spore, and designs a protocol to ensure the contagion does not spread. Their affair was a collaborative forgery. She was providing him access to the sacred, impenetrable grammar of my world. He was providing her with the thrill of desecrating it in the name of accessibility. My retribution would be a forensic linguistic analysis in 3 volumes. A critical edition of their demise. Silas Reed's authority was built on a single, influential monograph. The UR narrative. Story as the first human technology. It was cited in boardrooms and TED Talks. I began the most painstaking provenance audit of my career. Not of a pot shard, but of a career. I tracked every citation, every thanked colleague, every grant acknowledgement in his early work. I found the lacuna. His pivotal chapter on Mesopotamian omen texts as proto-algorithms relied almost entirely on the unpublished field notes and translations of a reclusive, brilliant Assyriologist named Dr. Eris Thorne. Thorn, a man broken by academic theft years prior, had vanished into obscurity. Through a labyrinth of academic databases and whispers from the few who remembered him, I located him in a dementia care facility in Oregon. His mind was a fragile vase, cracked but not empty. In exchange for a generous, anonymous donation to his care, routed through 5 shell charities I maintained for acquiring black market artifacts, his sole remaining relative granted me access to his personal archives. There, in a shaky hand, were the notes. Side-by-side comparison was devastating. Reed hadn't just been inspired by Thorn, he had systematically plagiarized his core interpretations, stripping them of their nuance and repackaging them with glossy, populist jargon. Thorn's life's work, the man's very cognition, had been cannibalized. I did not publish an expose. I crafted an artifact. Using a discontinued font from a 1980s academic press and aged paper stock, I meticulously recreated Thorn's original notes, then typeset Reed's corresponding chapter pages. I bound them in a slim, unmarked volume. This dossier, this silent, physical indictment, I mailed, not to a journalist, but to the 3 most dogmatic, respected, and viciously traditional philologists on earth. The accompanying letter, typed on a manual typewriter I bought for the purpose, contained only a question. Notice disturbing parallels. Would value your expert opinion on influence versus appropriation in attached. Anonymity appreciated. I was not accusing. I was requesting a peer review. The philologists, scenting blood in the water of a populist interloper, tore his work apart in a series of savage, private correspondences that soon, inevitably, leaked to the insular world of classical studies blogs. The headline was brutal in its dryness. Methodological concerns in Reed's UR narrative. A question of scholarly lineage. His credibility, his brand, began to hemorrhage among the only people whose respect he secretly craved. The real scholars. Elara's value was her perceived integrity as a translator of truth. I needed to prove her dialect was flawed. My position granted me sysadmin-level access to the consortium's donor relationship management database, the sacred text of her power. Phase 1 was a subtle corruption of metadata. I altered the digital audit trails for a portfolio of major donors she managed. Small, plausible anomalies. A changed interest code for a billionaire fascinated by Egyptian myth, now marked as Greco-Roman, a shifted date for a pivotal cultivation meeting. Then, I used a donor's compromised email, a phishing test I failed to report, to send a confused, concerned message to the board's treasurer. My donor profile update. The new focus areas logged seem erroneous. Can Elara's team confirm? Don't want my funds misallocated. It was a seed of institutional doubt, suggesting managerial sloppiness in the one realm where precision was gospel. Donor intent. Phase 2 was more elegant. Elara and Silas were staking their joint future on a revolutionary digital reliquary project, an AI meant to allow donors to converse with historical figures based on our archives. The hubris was breathtaking. I learned the AI was being trained on a curated corpus of translations. I obtained the corpus. As suspected, it was sanitized, biased, stripped of ambiguity. Using my access, I introduced a corrective data packet. It contained the fragmented, contradictory, and morally ambiguous texts we usually buried in appendices. The genocidal boasts of kings, the despairing poems of slaves, the medical texts advocating horrific procedures. I didn't hack the AI. I simply expanded its library to include the darkness we usually edited out. At the launch demo for the top-tier donors, Silas, beaming, asked the AI. What can the wisdom of Emperor Marcus Aurelius teach us about compassionate leadership? The AI, its dataset now containing not just the meditations but also the unflinching logs of his military campaigns, responded in its calm, synthetic voice. Marcus Aurelius wrote of accepting fate with equanimity. His legions, during the Marcomannic Wars, systematically exterminated entire tribes, including women and children, to secure the Danube frontier. His personal writings on duty were composed while authorizing what you would term ethnic cleansing. The lesson may be on the compartmentalization required for power. The silence in the room was a physical thing. A major donor, a Holocaust survivor's granddaughter, stood up and walked out without a word. The scandal wasn't technological, it was moral. Elara, who had curated the vision for the project, was crucified by the very empathy she claimed to champion. Reeling, the consortium's executive committee convened a closed session in the maximum security boardroom, a room whose every communication line I had helped design and secure. I knew its protocols like I knew the grammar of Sumerian. As they grappled with the disaster, I initiated my final synthesis. From my terminal in the silent archives, I routed a data stream into the boardroom's main display. First, a video clip, extracted from a public lecture Q&A months prior, now given devastating new context. Silas, laughing. Let's be honest, most of what we preserve is the propaganda of the winners. We're in the business of curating beautiful lies. The real history is too boring, or too ugly, to sell. Then, a spliced audio clip of Elara, from a voice memo she'd sent me about a difficult donor, edited with surgical precision, that we have to be selective. The full truth is a solvent. It dissolves the narratives people need to write checks. We're not archivists of what was, we're architects of what resonates. The words hung in the air of the temple they had defiled. It framed their sin not as infidelity to me, but as a fundamental betrayal of the consortium's sacred mission. The board, keepers of $1 trillion of beautiful lies, saw their chief narrators openly admitting to the forgery. Silas Reed was dismissed for gross misrepresentation of the consortium's scholarly ethics. Elara was offered a choice. A public, humiliating inquiry into the data integrity and donor misrepresentation issues, or an immediate, quiet resignation with a stringent NDA. She chose the silence. In the world of high-stakes cultural philanthropy, her resignation was a tombstone. The bridge between dust and gold had been declared structurally unsound. The archive of the present she sits now in the living room I designed, a space of calm, neutral tones and perfect acoustic dampening. She is a frozen corpus. The woman who wove epic narratives from fragments now spends hours tracing the same pattern in the weave of the rug with her toe. She believed she was a casualty of a reactionary old guard, a hubristic fool, and a public that craves fantasy but punishes honesty. She looks to me, her husband who understands the weight of silence, for interpretation. They wanted the story, she whispered yesterday, her voice stripped of all cadence, until they realized it was about them. I placed a cup of herbal tea in her hands, my gloved fingers from the lab now bare and gentle against her skin. "No, my dear," I said, my voice the soft rustle of a turning page. "They didn't want a story. They wanted a scripture. And you offered them a critical edition with the footnotes showing. And I did. I authored the definitive footnotes to their careers. I didn't burn their manuscript. I published the peer-reviewed critique that proved it was a palimpsest, written over the erased work of a better man. Now, I maintain the permanent archive of our life. The environment is perfectly controlled. The subject is permanently accessioned. And the quiet is so complete, so archival, that you can hear the true, final finding. The sound of a vibrant language reduced to a single, perfect, meticulously catalogued specimen, locked under glass for eternity.